pick on people, or is that how we're doing it? I'm fine with that. We've all done this before. Sir, you're first, Lou, you're second. Sir, go ahead.
One of your esteemed members here and I go back many, many years and decades. We've been sort of ensconced very deeply in the heart of enemy territory. I used to be a professor at Stanford, you know, as a TV producer and so forth.
You're a professor from Stanford and you're here?
Yeah.
Things do change.
My next door neighbor, he taught Shakespeare from a Marxist perspective. So
well, how else are you going to teach it? I mean,
but you know, like you guys, I mean, I enjoyed a certain confrontationalism, and I've always kind of gotten away with it until this tape comes out. I just wanted to compliment you that, you know, collectively, as a group of people who actually understand the fundamental. I mean, Jeff and I would used to get on the phone and talk for hours at night saying, why would this be? Why would that be? You know, the idea of the fantasy matrix they live in. You want to talk about why liberals are so vehement, hostile? It's because when you created a fantasy matrix, you cannot permit one dissent. You know, because obviously one little pinhole of light is going to actually make people start thinking. That's why they're so extreme that way.
I'm sorry. I didn't know.
Anyway, so I compliment you guys on that fundamental.
There is something to that, and in the corporate world, they would refer to it as best practices. I think one of the things conservatives do incredibly well. I think one of the things the Tea Party does extremely well. And give me your thoughts. We're constantly bouncing the ideas off each other, and we're open to the idea that we're wrong. Fundamentally, we would rather be wrong so we can eliminate the bad idea. And from what we see on the left, quite literally Occupy Wall Street being the example, they see the bad idea multiple times an hour, and they still don't knock the bad idea.
Fundamentally, that is true. Fundamentally, we're also individuals, much more so than the left. The left is very much a hive-minded groupthink, thinking we are rugged individuals here, which is why the fighting happens on the right so much. It's not just that we're trying to weed things out. It's in our very nature, and in the end, I think it does us better. One of the things, I'm going to say it here, and you can get all as mad as you want, one of the things I don't want to hear again ever is about Reagan's freaking 11th commandment, okay? Because Ronald Reagan was not like that when he was first a politician.
Absolutely.
It's a myth, all right? The thing is, people on the right have always fought tooth and nail to get to the best part, okay? And it is because we want to get to the best part, and we are individuals, and there's nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing wrong with us going through what we're going through in the primaries right now either.
And I believe the 11th commandment was said when he was already president. Certainly not when he was a candidate.
That's true.
That is key.
I'd like to just say, for those of you who don't know my background, I come from South Central Los Angeles. And it is not the hood in which you think the hood is today. That neighborhood was filled with two-parent homes. The lawns were kept, people went to church. There was something called shame. If you screwed up in school, trust me, the whole neighborhood would know about it. We all raised each other. There was pride, and I know now it's politically incorrect to say this person was a pride to their race or a credit to their race, but that was very important to us. During my teen years, however, it just became a whole lot more easy and fun to be a liberal. I'll be honest with you. There were no rules. You could do what you want. You could fight you could go to peace rallies and get contact highs and wear what you want to wear and do all that stuff. And the result of that is I wound up with 2 kids and no husband and no education. I was a welfare mom for years, and that's when I looked at my 2 daughters, one of which is holding that camera up there, right there. I looked at my 2 daughters and I realized that everything that liberalism had taught me was a lie and a fraud and destructive. So I knew that I had to backtrack, get my kids back in church, raise them the way that luckily I had an example set up from when I was raised in South Central. I had the example, I knew that it worked, I knew that it was a better way. So I tried my best to backtrack and teach them all I knew from, and those values were closely in line with Republican values. Now, when I registered, did Republicans do anything magical to make me sign up? No, their values were more in line with what I believe, and I hope that I raised my children. You know what, I have 2 girls, they're both career. They both have thriving careers. They're educated. One is, I was a dancer and a TV writer. One of them is a TV writer, and this lady here is a dancer. She'll be at Staples Center tomorrow. They vote, they care about what's going on in the country. Do we disagree on things? Yes. But they're civic-minded, they care about what's going on in the world. And they're supportive human beings. I mean, she's here to support me, and I don't know that any of our, you know, we agree politically on maybe anything. So that's my.
One quick thing, I was talking last year to Nikki Haley before she became the governor of South Carolina, and we were talking about outreach to. There are more names I can drop, but
we do that. You drop.
Actually, I was having lunch with her and Herman Cain at the time. So I asked, she was talking about the success she'd had with outreach to minorities and women, and I asked her how she'd been doing it. She said, I don't talk about Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative, or anything. I start asking them, you know, she'll ask them about taxes. What do you think is a fair percentage that you should pay? And she just engages them slowly like that, and then they start to realize, yeah, you know, I don't like, and then she'll say, but here's how much you're paying right now, and then they, you know, I don't like that. And she lures them in, talking about policy as it is, what they would like ideally, and then contrasting that with what's actually happening to them from the government, with the government, and then suddenly she says, every once in a while, there's just a little light that goes on, and I go, maybe I'm not as liberal as I thought I was. And that's how she's been having success doing that.
I find that when you do engage liberals, tell me your experiences. When you start engaging, they're in the main, they're never as liberal as they say they are. When you start digging into the facts, when you start digging into tax rates, when you start digging, bing, 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 you can, if they are not in the group, not in the herd, you can chip away. True or false?
I have seen the light go off.
Okay.
But I wanted to follow up on your question. If you're concerned about how viewing the world, I think it touches on your question. How do I, like, if the question is, how do you know that you're right? Because I feel like what I believe isn't selfish. That's really what it comes down to. Do I have... Now, it's hard for liberals to relate to that because they see everything about Republicans as being very selfish. I'm a capitalist, right? I'm a total capitalist. Now, when you tell that to a liberal, all they associate that is with corruption and greed, right? And I'm like, well, where do you get that from? There's corruption in communism, there's corruption in socialism. There's mostly, even more so, because in this case, people are trying to hide their money from what the government takes. In capitalism, we don't have that problem. All capitalism means is that the government has no access to my capital. Therefore, if I have the choice to how I'm going to use this money, if I'm a business owner, I can pay my employees better. I can give them more incentives to work better, for more production. I have more money to be charitable with. Now, when the government comes in and they want to institutionalize charity, charity is now corrupted. It's no longer charity anymore. So when I look at these things, and not just how I'm going to argue with the liberal, I'm looking at my own worldview. It's like, is what I believe going to be at the expense of others? Everything that liberals believe, or like take even abortion for instance. Now, abortion to a liberal is a mercy killing. It's the right thing to do. No, it's rooted in selfishness. It's totally selfish. Now, where's the conservative is coming from? It's like, no. What do you think? You think that by putting up that child for adoption is heartless, as if killing the child is more warm and fuzzy? So now we look at these things like, no. This is the less selfish thing to do. So I examine all the pillars of conservative, and I come back to the conclusion: is it selfish? No, it's not. So that's by that. That is how I gauge how I'm a conservative, and I view the rest of America and the world.
No.
Yeah, speaking of Ronald Reagan, my favorite Reagan quotes, the problem with our liberal friends is that they know, it's not that they're ignorant, that they know so much it isn't so. What's the best way to counter smears, lies, and attacks from Hollywood progressives like Michael Moore and Morgan Freeman and Sean Penn?
Mr. Cruiser, I'm going to start with you.
Again, in the infancy of what we're experiencing right now with social media, with new content creation, we are not at the mercy of the liberal meme anymore, okay? We are not at the mercy of how they want to define us. And it's infuriating them. It's one of the reasons they're acting out so badly right now. They can't tell us who we are and make it stick anymore. They weren't able to do it with Sarah Palin. I love saying Sarah Palin just to a liberal, just to raise their hand. 3 years trying to tell her what she was, and she spent 3 years politely giving them the finger without ever giving them the finger. And it's been brilliant. And we can do that now too, and it's only going to get better. We are no longer at their mercy. They don't own the narrative anymore, and it's driving them insane.
They want control of the internet.
I'm good.
Right.
You go ahead.
And we're not going to give them that.
That's right.
Well, that's all well and good that we're saying that, but I know just from taking my skills, and I've seen other people do it, conservatives do it, and they're trying to create their own content and get work out there. I know we're having this experience with ladies of the right. You've got to support us. It's not enough to say.
So if we can pass the hat, ladies and gentlemen, 5, 10, whatever you want to
I'm saying, the left is very clear about how they've used comedy and entertainment to promote their agenda and to take our candidates down. And when we have people who are willing to take the risk and get out there and do quality work, because to be honest, if we open that field up and it becomes successful for us to do it, we're going to have a whole host of people who have incredible talents who will not be fearful of coming out and doing the same. And we want to take back our country, well, you got to take back the hearts and minds of people before you can get them to change at the voting booth. And the arts is a way to do that.
Everybody up here is a believer in that culture conversation. The politics is downstream of culture. Plato, let me write the ballads of a nation, I care not who makes the laws. You may have heard that when Bill Whittle was here a few months back. My answer to that question, and I live this thesis, I believe this long before I had heard Andrew Breitbart say it, although he does it brilliantly. The answer is respond hard, respond quickly, and respond without fear. I have had the most distinct pleasure of having quite a few opportunities to be on MSNBC. That is a very unique satellite conversation to have with people who you know are starting the conversation with, if I can only trip this guy up, I can double my ratings tomorrow. Their sole purpose is to trip me up. My sole purpose is to take their agenda and say, not so, next. Rejecting the premise is key and fundamental, especially when the premise is flawed. Do not try to be liked. Do not try to get invited to the Christmas party. You will never be liked. You will never get invited. You cannot make friends with people who hate you. And it's very difficult, and I talk about this on the air and agree and disagree. The hardcore leftist progressive, not your neighbor, not that guy, the hardcore leftist progressive does indeed hate you. And they hate you because you do not believe like they believe. And you can call it fear, or you can call it herd mentality, or anything else. Because you do not believe what they believe, they hate you. You have to at least understand this, accept this, and then be able to move forward with, we're never going to be friends. But I'm not trying to change them. I can't change them. Who I can change, at least in the purview of interviews and radio or TV, are those people watching. Maybe I can get one. That's actually the Dana Lash thesis. That's the Evan Sayet thesis. One. If I can get one. People ask Dana Lash, who's the current editor of Big Journalism, why does she go on Real Time with Bill Maher? It drives them crazy. Why? You can get one. You have to be able to get one, and that's why you have to go into the lion's den. You actually have to do it. But don't accept the premise, and don't be afraid to not be liked. They don't like you anyway.
And that's a conversation I have with people all the time. First of all, the good news about what Tony's saying is there aren't nearly as many progressives as you would think there are. They just happen to have control of some major media outlets. Okay, so when MSNBC's talking, and university, when MSNBC's talking about the progressive base, it's the Manhattan media bubble, it's the entertainment industry, it's academia, and then 7 other hippies. Okay, that's it. That's the progressive base in America. It's not a base. It's a fringe. It's a fringe movement that happened to take over the modern Democratic Party. Okay, that's the problem at the moment. The good news is if you can go out and get one, it's always a good idea, but you have to get outside the echo chamber. And I have a lot of conservative friends who don't get outside the echo chamber. It's fun to be self-reinforcing like the liberals and feel good all day and not have any friction. I know people that are building up these Twitter followings that sit around and move the same information around to each other to like 500 other conservatives all day long. That's great. We've all seen this YouTube video 97 times by lunch. You need to get out and start engaging progressives. So, you know, the original question was, should you respond to these people? Maybe you don't always have to wait for it to be a response. Maybe you can sneak in and engage a little bit. Maybe you can go out and start talking to people. And one of the best ways I find to do that, when you start talking, they'll start giving you the, this is the way it is, this is the way you are, this is the way, and you respond with a personal anecdote. You say, well, here's what I've been doing. Here's the way I grew up. This is the way my parents are. This is the way my friends are. And you counter it with some personal information like that, and that usually disarms them a little bit. Sir.
How's everyone doing this evening? I just want to take my hat off to this brother because you hit it on the head in terms of what's happening in our community.
I'm insulted.
I'm going to tell you guys tonight, the shift happens. And there's going to be a shift in the voting process that takes place in this country. We just created an organization called Real Men Vote. And you can check us out at realmenvote.com. Mr. Spencer is the executive director of that program. And what we're doing is going out telling men to register to vote. And even if they're registered, because we know the people we're reaching out to are Democrats, we're saying re-register as undeclared. And the reason we're doing that is we need, you know, I say shift happens again because a lot of our people voted for Obama because they thought this big change was getting ready to happen. Unemployment in our community is higher than it's ever been. You talk about occupation. Illegal immigration has occupied our communities. So we're not only losing jobs, we're losing trade. And the Democrat Party convinces us that aid is the Band-Aid, but it's not. It's killing us, it's strangling us. And so we have, like Sonia said, you got these young sisters having babies. We kill more black people than any gang could do through abortions. So shift is about to happen, and it's going to happen with us educating folks on what's happening in history, how the Democrat, Maxine Waters, oh my God, another story. But what I want, the question I have is, this is my first Tea Party event. I was looking for some tea. When you're coming to our community to make this shift happen, just bring some tea. So my question is, how are you going to reach the people who are under this illusion that the Democrat Party has a solution?
How do we reach you?
You reach me because, well, see, I went to this all-black institution, greatest black college in America.
Yep.
And Howard. And I was just telling James on the way over here, the Republican Party has ensured that my alma mater is going to continue to exist. Now, the Democrat Party is allowing the DREAM Act. When I first started going to school, if you were from another country, you paid what was called an international tuition. And that was a little higher than the regular tuition, but that also subsidized the institution so it could keep running. Now we're giving away education, and again, our community is not participating. We're looking for aid instead of trade. We're looking for aid instead of opportunities to go forward. So how I got here is in our fight to make this shift happen. I'm not a loyalist to the Democratic Party. I'm not a loyalist to a candidate just because they're black. And I think right now, Obama becomes the perfect opportunity for us to say that loyalty doesn't work.
And that's the personal anecdote thing I'm talking about right there. That's what I'm talking about.
I'm going to take your point and question, and I'm going to take it to you, Sonia, and Alfonso, and Stephen. You should be insulted, but I'm not taking it to you.
What do you got against pull-ups?
Many things. All I can think about, what's your name again, sir?
Greg.
Greg. All I can think about when Greg was talking, it was this past weekend on a show called Up, which is on MSNBC early in the morning. Chris Hayes is the host. A strategist, Melissa Harris Perry. Chris Hayes was talking about how people talk about the fact that 53% of the people pay the taxes in America, 47% don't pay the taxes. And she said, I think that statistic is racist.
And I'm sure Hayes challenged her.
It is a statistic based on who pays taxes and who doesn't. She, who happens to be a black woman, said that that statistic is racist. It has racial overtones. Just like playing basketball obviously had racial overtones. And you know I'm a big believer in the racer meme and what it has done to America. All I could think about when Greg was talking is if the left, if MSNBC, if Huffington Post heard that conversation, sees this tape, they're going to say, Greg is a racist.
I would say Greg is a racist or Greg is a sellout. I've been doing this long enough to be called so many creative names. I think my favorite was Aunt Tom. But yeah, I mean, you've seen what happened recently to Herman Cain. Those are only said to stop him. They are setting an example that if anybody comes out, like Greg, like Zoe, and myself, you gotta stop them in their tracks. You've got to stop them. You got to stop them in their communities. You got to stop the way they feel about themselves. That's all that's set up to do. Unfortunately, it's just not going to happen. And I'm so happy to see that you're doing this. I've met some other people recently that are going into the inner city and they're taking like girls to Idlewild and they're teaching them, and they're not doing it in a Republican or conservative or anything, but they're just teaching them values and how to feel about yourself as a woman and how to honor yourself and how to care about your future. And those are all of our values. So eventually, hopefully, these girls will put two and two together when it comes to making a decision about voting and life and how they want to see the country run, and they'll have that background for it.
Also, now, when Sonia was talking about the epithets that come our way, there's an example of that projection thing. It's all you. It's all you, all day long, all day strong. You know, these sentiments that you have, you're hiding behind projection. But also a thing to look at, you know, in these communities where unemployment is high, high school dropout rate is high, people going to jail, you know, your incarceration rate is high. If you go and look at who represent these communities, all Democrat. Always. You know, so even an example would be my dad, who's a die-hard Democrat, right? No, I mean, apple doesn't fall far from the tree in terms of knuckleheadism, right? but my dad, you know, die-hard Democrat, and he's like, son, you have to understand this is how I was raised. You know, and I was like, okay, well, but still, Dad, I don't know where you get that from. You know, I understand that you grew up in the South, you know, and that's your hotbed of racism. Come on, Dad, let's go and take a look. Look at all the representation. Look at your governor. Look at your congressmen, your senators. Look at your governor. Almost all Democrats. All that racism that you're so bad, it's always been them. The disenfranchising, and like I said, the high school dropout rates, and all these other things that that you have, whether it's the black community, whether it's the Hispanic community, whether it's rural, it doesn't matter. You go back to it, it's always been Democrats. So there's one thing that we may really want to point out. It's like, look, man, these are the things that you're really upset about. But while I'm thinking about it, don't underestimate these people. You know, don't feel like, they're liberal. What do they know? You know, it's sometimes it comes down to strength in numbers, because there's a lot of these cats that don't know. You know, and if they get their way, and they are getting their way, this is why the country is going the way that it's going. So, you know, please don't underestimate it. Be ready to be fully armed. You know.
There's something very important there. Is you have to understand when you're dealing with the left, especially political operatives. Politics is war to them. War is politics. Politics is war. They've got it backwards, and they are at it 24/7 over there. So be ready to battle them, like Zoe said, because they are going to come at you. When you start to point out facts to them, like has been happening recently, you know, we have different ways of doing it. The way they flipped it around, when you point out that, okay, that's a Democrat there, that's a Democrat there, well, the Republicans haven't let them do it. Republicans haven't let them change. They've got a new meme ready to go. They've got a meme machine that spits them out faster than you can imagine. So be ready.
We're at the witching hour. And wanted to thank you all so much for having us here. We're actually at 9 o'clock. I'm so sorry, Patrick. I really am. Can't thank you enough for having us here and allowing us to engage. As Sonia mentioned, moving this culture war is important, and your support is important. Make sure you know our websites. Make sure you know where we are on Twitter and Facebook. Make sure you know how to engage us. We would like to engage you. If we're working on projects and you want to be a part of it, let us know. We appreciate the help. A huge hand for Alfonso Rachel.